welcome to Leaders in Library Season 3. It's a pleasure to have you because you are the first guest of the season. And to tell others and also pull you a little bit before we start, Amit did not come on Season 1. He missed Season 2, and I'll tell you the reason why. And finally, I have him on Season 3. So thank you for finally being there.
No, namaskar to all your listeners, and thank you for having me. And yes, I know I missed Season 1, Season 2. So this time I was very particular that I have to get on to the Season 3 before I miss that. No, I'm glad that, I'm finally here. I've been wanting to be here on this platform with you for a long, long time. So the honor is all mine.
Absolutely. It's all mutual. We have been talking for many months on the kind of books that you read and the kind of book that I read, and both of us connected only by one particular word called book that connected both of us. And I'm so glad to have you this time, Amit. I'm very humbled to tell you that this Season 3 has got over 20 plus leaders from the world of CCUs and CHROs and global coaching fraternity who are crazy maverick book lovers like you and me, who eat, live, breathe books. And I'm going to have a great conversation with all of them, and you are starting it for us. So thank you so much.
No, I'm looking forward to listening all other conversations. Let me tell you, I think it's always a pleasure to listen someone talk about books, and with the passion that people talk, it also gives you a lot of insight about the books. And I'm also hoping that some of them will recommend some books which I have not read and which I will surely pick up and then go devour them.
Oh yes, when it comes on LinkedIn, you will know which are the other books that people are talking about, and some of them you and I can always pick up. Superb. So let's get started. I'm just rubbing my hands to create some heat and energy and get started and talk about you and the book of the day. So before we get started, let me introduce you to the audience. Right? All of you, you know Amit. He's active, alert, awake a lot on LinkedIn. But let me still formally introduce Amit. Amit Malik is the CEO of AVIVA Insurance. He is one of the person whom all of us from the world of L&OD HR are very proud of, because he's one of the CHROs who moved up to occupy the position of the CEO of the organization. So like many other people across the world who have become CEOs from CHRO, we have our own Amit here. So such a pleasure to have you, Amit. He is also a certified coach. He is somebody who's constantly there on panels talking about leadership and how leadership can contribute towards organization growth and expansion. He's a crazy book reader. What you see behind him is only a tip of the iceberg. People have bookshelves inside houses. He has got a house inside bookshelves. That's how he is. Such a pleasure to have him. Welcome to the show, formally, Amit.
Thank you, Rajiv. Yes, my wife would agree with that statement that I have a house inside a bookshelf. Absolutely.
Super. So let me start with the first question. Tell me, Amit, you've had an inspiring journey and you've been with the banking industry, then moved on to the insurance industry, and today you're leading a huge organization on this part of the world. Tell me how books play a significant role in your growth of leadership. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think that's a very interesting question. I read all kinds of books, Rajiv. There is no genre. I firmly believe that a book calls out to you, and I buy books and then I keep them in so some of these shelves that you see, there is a to be read shelf and there is a red shelf and all of that stuff. But my association of books, let me take a step back, goes right back to the childhood. Even before I remember, my earliest memories of childhood has been about reading books. In our times when you would have relatives who would visit, they would give you money, you would get money on your birthdays. I would collect all of that money and I would only go and do is buy books. And my father was posted in various parts. He was in BSF, Border Security Force. So he was posted in remote areas where you would not have bookshops. So I would save, and when I would come to Delhi for my grandparents' house, I would then go to this bookshop in Karol Bagh and I would buy 5, 10, 11, 12 books, as much money as I would have to buy books and then carry them back with me in the train journey so that I could read for many, many months. So that's how my association with books has started.
Okay.
But when I look at, when one looks at own career or leadership journey, books have always been a part. But, when you start to develop as a leader and through your own experiences, your ideas, the values of leadership, you start to build some things that matter to you. And then when you read a book, and the book articulates your own ideas, and you feel that you could have written the book, or you feel a lot part of the book. I think that for me has always been the validation of my thoughts and ideas on leadership. I also read books on areas that I don't know, so that I can then gather information, while people go to internet and read a lot. So like recently I just read a book on Bitcoin and crypto, because I wanted to understand the origin of money and evolution till Bitcoin. So now that the 200-year journey of how money got evolved, and how we are now to Bitcoin and crypto. So that's what I do. So, that's how and that is why the today's book that we have is an easy reference, because I clearly feel that it's got a lot of connection or validation of my thoughts on leadership and ideas. So
Absolutely. What a fantastic. Thanks for taking me back into my memory lane when my father would travel, and whenever he comes back, the first thing is I'll go and open his briefcase and see which is the book that is bought for us. So it used to be great time when the Enid Blytons of the world and Robert Ludlums of the world and Jeffrey Archer of the world, it took us to what kind of books we're reading today. So great memory.
And Rajiv, in our times, no, we didn't have the choice. There was no gender classification of books in border security force or in remote places in cantonments. We used to have a small library. So whatever be the book, whether it was Nancy Drew, Mallory Towers, St. Clair's, Hardy Boys, Enchanted Woods, you just asterisks, obliques, you just picked it up and read it. There was no classification of this is for boys, this is for girls. A book was a book, and you read it like you said. So Agatha Christie's and all of you just picked it up and read it. And I think that was fun.
Fantastic. That leads me to the next question. Tell me what made you pick this day, and please call out the name of the book and why this book for the day that you want to
the hard things about hard things, like I told you, when I read this book, a lot of it was about leadership and journey, and a lot of thoughts were there about the learnings that I had encountered as the HR leader or as a working professional over my career. And the book talks about building, the book talks about culture, the book talks about letting go of people, book talks about living the values, book talks about respect in the organization, book talks about performance culture. It brings in a lot of leadership. It talks about wartime CEO, peacetime CEO. It talks about how a CEO should be, it talks about how a CXO should be. And those were the things that I could relate to. And and I have this bad habit of, when I read some books, and I make notes on the side, because my books are my books. So I make notes on the side, and I annotate, and I underline, and I fold pages, because those are the thoughts that I want to visit. So my whole idea is, when I read a book again, and this is a book that I've always kept going to, a lot of times. So when I took over as the CEO, I went and read those chapters about a CEO and how do you do and what do you be, just to refresh and bring those thoughts in. And that's why this book's been very, very, close to me. And I always feel that irrespective of what stage of a career you are in, anybody can pick this book, and then because this book tells you about where you are, and it also tells you about what your ambition is and how you could get there. So it kind of helps you bridge that gap. And it's also one of the most gifted books that I've gifted people.
Lovely, lovely. What I liked when I read this book is, I think Ben has been absolutely audacious to speak his mind out. He doesn't go with choice of words or flowery words or vanilla coated. He just tells his mind in the book, basis his experience over the years of his own journey. So it was very practical and just to the point.
Something that I believe leaders should demonstrate is courage and conviction. And in this book, Ben has demonstrated a lot of courage, like you said, to say it the way it is, and a lot of conviction in what he says.
Yeah.
So I saw that whole phrase of courage and conviction coming alive in this book. And that's why this resonated with me.
Absolutely. And the conviction came out of the vast experiences that he has had through his entrepreneurship journey of up and down and up and down, isn't it? Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. I think a lot of people who want to be founders, who want to go into that role of building something, should read this book.
High five from my side. Absolutely. I completely agree to that. It's a go-to book for all people who are wanting to take a plunge into entrepreneurship. It's a great insight. Yes. I agree to that. And I'm someone who moved into entrepreneurship 3.5 years back. So I could relate to this book when he said, Rajiv, this is what I want to talk about when we initially started speaking. So lovely. So 5 things that inspired me, which I thought should be the talking points for the day today, right? And let me ask you the first one. He talks about something called the struggle. All of us have this a word in our life. We have gone through this. But what I liked is, most people tell you what you should do to ensure that the struggle doesn't happen in your life. But what Ben says is, what you should do after you have screwed it out, which I thought was fantastic. So let's talk about the other side of the journey. Wait, गड़बड़ तो हो गया, अभी क्या करें? What was your big lesson that you had from this?
See, I think, I absolutely resonate with that part when he says, let me start by saying what you must do. So let's take that point of what you must do after you, pardon my friend, screwed up or you failed. I think the first is you own up, simple and plain. You just own up and say, I didn't get it right. No, irrespective of you're a CEO or you're a leader or you're a frontline boss or you're an individual employee, you own up and say, I didn't get it right. That's the first one. Because, struggle is not quitting when it is the only option. Struggle is not about failure. I think struggle is the genesis of where success comes from. If any successful person, they would have struggled at something or at some time in their career or in their role. We all struggle a lot during our day-to-day stuff. And struggle, people feel that if I give up, that is the end of my struggle. Actually, giving up is not end of the struggle. Or, like Ben says, if you go on a vacation, your mind will still be in the struggle. Or if you take a break or if you seek redemption, it's not easy, because if you are passionate and you are struggling, the struggle will remain with you. It is not easy and it is not going to go away and it is not going to make you feel right. So I think for young people or leaders today who are going through struggle, a couple of things in my mind that they can do or they should do to deal with struggle. If you allow, I'll share that. Is my perspective, which Ben also kind of resonates. First and foremost is I think we take too much upon ourselves, especially as leaders. Right. How could we get it wrong? Oh my God, what will the others think about it? What will my peers think about it? We don't need to burden. We don't need to take it personally. I think you just stand up, own and say, I didn't get it right. Seek support and help. I think if you share the problem and get the best minds in the company or in your team to help you and take their guidance, the team will gladly rally around you to help. I think that's the first part. That's a good starting. I think the second is you move your focus from what went wrong and who did wrong. There is no point in laying a blame at someone else's door, right? Because that's not going to help. I think it's important is to say, we've got it wrong. Let's go to the root cause of the issue so that we don't repeat the issue. If it's a customer service issue, if it's a product issue, if it's a sales issue, if it's a partner issue, let's ensure we do not repeat the issue. Let's work through the clutter, go back to the first principle of the problem. Because you cannot change the outcome. What has happened has happened. Right. How we respond. A lot of us start getting into the blame game, and that's the culture of the organization. I think when nothing works, like Ben says, and it is so true, he says, you have to still remember that there is one move that will turn it all around. So you cannot give up. You just have to find that one move. You can still do right by the customer, no matter how aggrieved the customer is. You can still do something to be right by the customer. You can still get your product right. You can still get that whole platform going. And also people should remember it's not about today. A lot of people contextualize their struggle with today. Will I be seen as success? Will I not be seen as success? What happens to my appraisal? What happens to my KPIs? It is about tomorrow. You just need to keep going through, because the view has to be tomorrow. The view has to be the day after, because the view has to be the customer, the product. Finally, I believe it's the struggle that separates the leaders and the fighters from managers and normal employees. It's the scars on your back. And if you look at my tweet, I tweet about scars a lot, saying scars on your back that you can. I think that's what is about struggle. That is my own personal mix of it, what the book says.
I think very true, because scars are nothing but evidences of the effort that's gone as a precursor to the success journey. And I think very, very rightly said it. I like the way you put it across, saying that it's not about the present, it's about the future. So as long as you're thinking with a futuristic mind, then you want to shift from who to what and try to solve the problem. Very, very nice. In fact, that takes me to the next question, which is also very chronologically, I think it's kind of sits here, is all of us feel that everything is going to happen right. And sab theek ho jayega, hunky dory. Yeah, one side of the management or the thinking says you need to be positive. You need to always think about things that will happen good in life. Don't be negative, etc., etc. Jo humko sab log gyan dete hain, which is good. But Ben talks about something which I thought was beautiful. He brings in this word called positivity and a word called delusion, and says positivity delusion. I thought this was a beautiful coining of two words which I have never tried bringing together till I read this book. What is your take on this phrase called the positivity delusion? And what do you think is Ben giving us a message to all of us? Amit?
See, I think it's a very common trap that leaders fall into.
Hmm.
Right? When I read the book, I also related to it. He's put it very nicely, so I love the phrase. But it's a very common trap, because what happens is when you are the leader, you are taught to say, as a leader, you have to absorb the bad news and only give the good news. Like you said, spread positivity, share the good news. Bad news is to be taken by you. But that's not actually true. I think it's important for the leader to balance the news and the situation. Where you clearly lay out to the team and say, this is how the things are. And when you are open and honest and you balance it out, that also brings a sense of shared purpose. When we say the team has to share a purpose, how will the team have a shared purpose if the team doesn't know the true situation? Right. So, I'm not saying be a doomsday, be on the other end of the continuum, be a doomsday prophet and say everything is going to sink. No, but say, lay it out clearly. What needs to be done to survive? What needs to be done to grow? What do we need to achieve? I think if we are able to say, this is what is survival team, this is what is growth, and this is what we need to achieve and where we want to be. I think if you lay it out clearly, I think the team, kind of gets it. And, people also appreciate, because they then see you as doing a adult to adult conversation. They don't see you as doing a adult to a junior or an adult to a subordinate conversation. And people respect when you do an adult to adult conversation. To say, have trust in me, have faith in me. I think that's important. Leaders, I think, must trust the team and build it. That is how the team members will understand the action of the leader. So if you are taking a drastic action or a harsh action, or if you are asking the organization to take a hard call, if you don't lay it out how it is, how will the organization understand why you are doing it? I think the why gets answered when you lay it out and you balance it. The second is share the situation with the team members, because, as leaders, we are always under pressure to say, my idea is the best idea. That is something that I don't practice. I always say into the room that my idea is not the best idea. Just because I have said it and I'm the CEO or I'm the CXO doesn't mean that that is the best idea. Anyone who has a better idea, let's talk about it, because let's agree on that big idea. Let's agree on that better idea. And then all of us will rally to make it.
Very true. Very true.
The other important factor, in this positivity delusion we fail is, Rajiv, there is this old age mantra saying, if you have a problem, you should always bring a solution. I don't think that works anymore. You have to have a culture where people are able to bring a problem and yet be honest and say, I do not know the solution, but I'm willing to work with others to find a solution. For me, that is very important. Saying, I don't know the solution, but I'm willing to work with others. So I don't agree. I'm not of that, just throw the problem and don't give a solution. No, you may not have a solution, but are you willing to work with others to find? Because what happens is, if you say, don't come to me without a solution, a lot of people who don't have solution will try and hide it, brush it under the carpet. But at some point, the genie will come out of the bottle. The hell will break loose, as they say. And at that time, it will be too late for the management, for the company, for everybody else. So give people the courage to come and say, I have seen a problem. I don't know the solution, but let's work. I'm willing to work with anybody who has a solution and solve it. I think that's the culture that will help, take away this whole delusion.
I have two questions which just cropped in my head as you were talking. Are you also trying to tell, along with Ben, the young leaders, for them to understand, Amit, that if leaders start communicating about the problem very transparently, that can be a very strong feeder or an input to build trust in the organization? And the question came in my head because we go back to the powerful book of Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. He talks about vulnerability in an organization, right? I think this is all about how vulnerable can a leader be and be open to say, was we goofed up. Kya karna batao?
Absolutely. I agree with you. See, people always have a sense of how things are going, whether it is a small team, a big team, an organization. They know what is working, what is not working. They always have a sense. People may share it, may not share it, because everyone is very, very different. But to be vulnerable is a very, very good starting point, because that tells, the message that it gives is, it's okay to fail. It's okay to not know. It's okay to say, I don't have an idea. It's okay to acknowledge what you are and then build on it. See, not everyone is supposed to. Why do we have to burden leaders by saying just because you are a leader, you need to have all the answers?
Very true.
Why? The answer can come from someone who is 1 year into the organization, has no historic baggage, comes with a different mindset, and is challenging the status quo. So why will I not encourage that young professional to give the answer, and why only expect the team leader of that team to be able to come up with an answer? Answer, a thought can come from anywhere. People see the same problem differently. So we should encourage people to respond to the way they see it. I think that's where I think we take a lot of burden on ourselves. We take a lot of burden. In the meeting, we will not. We only think that once the senior most guy has spoken, that's the gospel. I think that's wrong. I have been very vulnerable, Rajiv. I can tell you, even as a CEO, I walk into the meeting and say, I don't understand this concept, or I don't know this terminology. Can someone please explain? People are used to.
Thanks for saying that, because my question was this, and allow me to digress a little away from the book and come into your journey, Amit. From a CHRO, you move to being a CEO. I'm sure there must have been some moments of anxiety. You must have toppled on the bed at 2 a.m., 1 a.m. Yeah, ab CEO ban gaya ho, ya banne wala ho, no, got the entire organization below me. You must have gone through certain pangs of anxiety. Did vulnerability element also creep in, and how did you handle that? How should leaders do that?
So actually, I don't know how many of your listeners know of my journey, that I did an ops role for 3 years before I got the CEO role. So I was a COO before I got the CEO role. So my transition actually happened more when I moved from CHRO to also do the COO role. So I was doing 2 jobs. By that time, when I moved to the CEO role, the organization had already seen me doing a business role for 3 years, so they knew what to expect. But when I moved from CHRO in 2018 to do the COO role along with my CHRO role, at that time, I faced this. A lot of people thought that this HR guy does not, what will he do running operations, customer service, and the retention book, which is the existing customer. So right from gamut of call center to underwriting to claims to retention of customers, all that was the remit along with admin. And people had that question. And yes, I walked into meetings where I said, I don't know, or I want to understand. I would roll up my sleeves and say, I want a deep dive session on this particular aspect of the business, and I want to understand this. I think initially people were like, oh, he doesn't even know this. But gradually people learned to appreciate that, I was making the effort to understand. I was being, like you said, I was being vulnerable to say, I don't know this. But within 6 months, they knew that now I had the grasp of the process in detail. Because the first 6 months, I only demonstrated a learner's mindset. Similarly, when I became the CEO, for the first 3 months of the job, I was very consciously into the zone of a learner's mindset. Learning about actuarial, learning about reserving, learning about product development, learning about financial, working capital, investment. Those parts of the business where I was aware of, but I wasn't so into it. And that's where I did my learning. So the pieces that I had done, sales and distribution or operations or customer service or people function and other groups, I knew. So there I wore a different hat, and there I wore a different hat. So, I was in that learners. I have sat with my appointed actuary and discussed reserving so many times to understand how he does it, how the actuarial team does it, what is the regulatory requirement. And, you have to open. So the starting point is, I don't know, can you teach me? And I think that's a very good starting point for anybody who needs to start.
I agree. I'm going to ask one question, the same topic, before we go to the next one, right? Hold on to that, because it's very interesting. And because I do a lot of leadership work for organizations, this is one thing that top leaders who are in that transition phase struggling with. I think your input will be greatly valued. I understand that it's good to be exposing your vulnerability and say, boss, I do not know, which is good. But I think one of the reasons why some leaders, after occupying that position, do not do is because they think, what will be the perception and the first image that people will carry about me? Now that I've become a CEO, what will people think about me? Tell me, how do the young leaders stop worrying about the perception that people have about me and yet project that I'm a learner? I'm going to be a sponge absorbing for the next couple of months, and that's what I'm going to do. How do you make that transition in your thinking?
I think there is a differentiation here. See, when people see you and judge you with the decisions that you take, the calls that you make. The learner mindset is for an individual to be able to take the right call. So in your mind as a leader, you have to differentiate that. I am being a sponge, I am being a learner, I'm being vulnerable because I want to gather as much information as I can. Right. See, if you don't do that as a leader, people will not speak up, they will not share, they will assume that you know. And they will not give you the details which is required for you to arrive at a decision.
Good point. Yes.
The perception of how you are as a leader will be solidified by the decisions you take and the outcome of those decisions. So don't worry about the learning process. Don't worry about, so if you have to spend 5 hours to learn about some issue, spend those 5 hours and then take a call. And when that call proves right or does not prove right over the period of next 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, depending on what the call is, or the call itself that you have taken, that is what people will judge you with, because they know what call should be taken. They are looking at you as to how you arrive at that call. That is what, if you differentiate. I have always differentiated. So even in any job from day one, I've never shied away from taking a decision. But I made sure that I get enough data and information from the right people what I need to make that decision. That is. So that's where you differentiate between a learner mindset and a decisive mindset.
Right. I think those set of people will appreciate the decision that you take eventually, because they have seen you investing time in learning from them.
Yes, exactly. That's the point.
Very true.
Then they are with you whether the decision goes right or wrong, because they have also invested in helping you arrive at that decision.
Correct. They see you as somebody who just not come and taken a decision, but taken their help to understand and now giving a decision. So they all own it up if it goes right. They own it up if it not goes right also. Very good. I think it's a great point. I want to go to the next one. Programming your culture. I thought, again, a lovely phrase. And these authors have this knack of getting words together and just hits you like a bullseye. फिर मैं सोचता यार ये तो मैं भी कर सकता था, but कर लिया होता किताब मैं लिख लिया होता. So I think they do a fantastic job there. I love this phrase, programming your culture. How did you do this in your transition from the CHRO to the COO and now the CEO? What are a few things that you did from the learning of the book? That would be a great input to people.
I also loved the phrase when I read the book, like Positivity Delusion, programming of your culture. See, I agree with Ben on a lot of stuff when he talks about culture. And I also it resonates with me. So, for your listeners, like, I always believe that, doing, things that people talk about, getting your pets to work, dry cleaning at office, Zumba classes, sleeping pods, 10 cuisines at cafeteria. This is not culture. These are perks of the job which make you an attractive workplace. When you have to attract talent, you talk about all of this. This doesn't necessarily make you a better company to work for or a better workplace. And I think the youngsters and the people who are coming into employment, or anybody who's changing a job, must differentiate. We at AVIVA don't have 10 cuisines in our cafeteria. We don't do Zumba classes. We do not offer dry cleaning services. Yes, because, we are in a business, we are in a situation. It's also a lot about, parts. I'm not saying people should not do it. No, they should necessarily do it. Would I want to work in a place like this? Absolutely, I would want to work in a place like this. Does it make the place attractive? Yes, it makes the place very attractive, right? But it doesn't always make it better. I think, in my own view, what makes the place better is where leaders live the value, where there is a lot of respect and inclusion. And I'm not talking about diversity, I'm talking about inclusion, because for me, inclusion is very important. Inclusion of thought, inclusion of ideas, inclusion of individuals. where people know what it takes to be a success, and everyone has a shot at becoming successful. Where in an organization where customer, employee, and the product is at the center of everything that you do. You aim for excellence in all three sectors. And in my own journey, I have followed these three principles. And I've ensured that people, wherever I am, the tone is set at the top, whether I was a CXO, whether I was a CHRO, so that people see the leaders living the values, and there is a lot of respect and inclusion. There's one thing that I don't tolerate is disrespect for anybody, irrespective of who that person is, from a pantry boy or a security guard to where employees know what it takes to be successful. And I've always worked out process and policies that support the same. Right? It is about valuing your employees and providing them a better place of work. See, I always believe people will join you and people will leave you. That is the truth, right? So you are lucky. Some people work 9 years, some people work 10 years, some people work 15, some people work 1 month, some people work 1 year, some people work.
That's a function of which station do they want to deport.
Yes. But as an organization, we ask, or we want people to contribute. I have always asked, saying, how have we made this individual a better professional during his or her journey with us as an organization? Irrespective of the organization that I've worked for, I've said it is also the organization's responsibility to add value to the individual, to make the individual more employable. And when the individual moves out of your organization, you still cherish his or her success. So, at one point, a few years back, we used to be very proud that when you looked at appointed actuaries in the insurance industry, almost 30 to 40% of the appointed actuaries in the insurance industry were ex-AVIVA alumni. And you were like, see, this is what we have given to the industry. So you also have to cherish. And I think that is the culture. That is how you build the culture. And if you have all of that stuff, I would also want to be an organization which has so much money that we can offer all of that. I would love to. So I have nothing against it. Please don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying, people, the workforce has to differentiate between. And having the two is ideal. Absolutely. Great. And that is what makes some organizations very good, because they are able to mix the two and able to balance the two, which is very
right. True. I mean, I can relate to what you're saying, Amit, because one of the organization which I always keep talking about, and sometimes I still use present tense, forgetting the fact that I've left the organization many years back, because it had a huge impact in my career, which was TVS Motor. I was the head of L&OD for the organization. I remember, Amit, those were the days where we used to wear the navy blue trousers and a white shirt with the logo of TVS on the chest and the horse on the sleeves of a slack shirt. Felt very proud of carrying the logo on the chest. I was super impressed by the fact that when we would go on a field visit to meet dealerships and territory managers, area managers, I had a couple of colleagues. These were initial days of my joining the organization when I was understanding the field and business. After the day meeting, we would want to go to the bar in the evening for a drink. I had one or two colleagues who would actually want to go to the room, remove the uniform, wear a casual dress, and go to the bar because they said, I don't want to carry the glass carrying the logo on my chest. I said, this can't happen in a day. It can happen only in such organizations which are 150 years old. I said, fantastic. Let me give you one more. Any TVS employee outside the plant will always look for a zebra crossing to cross the road because he or she has always done it inside the plant. And how can a TVS guy just walk across? You need to take a zebra crossing. I said, these are fabulous learnings for me.
When I was in GSK, I used to be HR for North region. That was my first introduction to sales. And when I used to visit the market, and I've sat on a wholesaler salesman ka Luna ke piche, not even the GSK employee, but the wholesaler salesman ke Luna ke piche, and done the beat, trade book and all of that. And when in GSK, when you did the retail and you looked at point of sale, Boost ka, Horlicks ka, wo point of sale hai, wo tanga hai, nahi tanga. My head of sales at that time, when he used to visit, he used to carry 2 handkerchiefs.
Okay.
The head of sales of the company, amazing gentleman and my mentor at that time in the organization, used to carry 2. So once I asked him, I said, Subs, why do you carry 2 handkerchiefs? He said, one is for my use. One is if I walk into a retailer shop and I see a bottle of Horlicks or a bottle of Boost that has dust on its cap, I would see him cleaning it himself and keeping the bottle back. Saying,
Wow.
I'm visiting this, I may be whoever, I'm visiting the retailer, but if I see a bottle of Horlicks or Boost which has dust, he would take the bottle, clean it up, put it back, so that when the customer walks in, the customer sees a shiny bottle, because if it is not shiny, what are the chances the customer will not pick it up, even if he or she wants the product, saying this is old. And that would also be a lesson to the retailer and to the wholesaler salesman to say, you should clean it.
Did you
And I thought
realize?
that was how you set the tone at the top.
Absolutely. Did you realize you just gave an example of the employee making the product his own and getting the customer happy to buy the product? Your customer employee product CP ka jo triangle aap bol rahe ho, it's been displayed by this gentleman that you're talking about. So right, so right. Fantastic, fantastic. That takes me to the next question here. But this was. I mean, I'm not ever thought of putting CEOs as these two categories: peacetime CEO and a wartime CEO. Yeah, I understand, but ऐसा कभी मैंने categorize नहीं किया. Now that you are a CEO, what are the top 3 lessons you picked from this concept of a peacetime CEO and a wartime CEO from that? He gives a list of things. Give me 3 that really hit you hard.
When I took over, it was clearly a tough time. I don't know if it was a wartime, but it was a tough time for us at AVIVA India. Right? We were facing COVID challenge. We were facing customers asking us for products and services. We were also facing questions from our employees and partners as to how do we grow and turn around this company to what it was once. And we were the harbingers of bank insurance in India at one point in time. So I played my role, when I look at my role, as peacetime for certain functions and wartime for certain functions. So I tried to balance it. One can't be. When Ben wrote that, I always feel that there cannot be, unless it's a startup in a semi-mature or an organization which has been around for 10-15 years, you will always have to balance it out. You cannot be either or. It's not as black and white. I couldn't figure that black and white out. So what I did was I clearly laid out the focus for the company, and I was intolerant of any deviation from it. So if it did not propel, if any initiative did not propel us towards our goals, we would not do it. We would not do good to do things. That's two important things. The second that I did was I was very clear in saying we have no time for excuses. There are 10 reasons why we can do it. There are 10 reasons why we can't do it. Let's focus on the 10 reasons why we can do it and just make it happen with the resources we had. Otherwise, we can all wish, I wish I had extra 10 crores. I wish I had 2 more people. I wish I had this, let's just. And the third thing that I always said was, let us deliver what we have promised and do it consistently. So if we have hit a number, we have to hit a number in a month, let's do it. If we promise the customer that this will get resolved in 48 hours, let's get it done in 48 hours. And let's do it consistently. So those are the 3 things that I put out there and said, this is what we are going to do from a focus and a passion and the CEO.
Fantastic. You know what, when you said passion, I just remembered what Angela Duckworth talks about in the book Grit. She beautifully says, passion is not about intensity, it's about consistency.
Yes.
That was a huge insight for me. I said, wow, this makes sense. If I'm doing Leaders and Libraries for season 3, and when you and me talk after a couple of years and I say, Amit, please come back, this is the 100th episode of Leaders and Library, you would say, Rajiv, you are passionate because there is consistency. It's not about intensity.
And a lot of people are not able to see that difference. And I always say that, it's not about being boring. It's not about doing this. It's about doing it consistently, right? So that, you can then move to the next level. See, people forget that, you move a certain level, you attain a mastery, then you move a certain level and you move up. Some do it faster, some do it slower. Everyone does it at their own pace. But till you don't do this level, you go to next, your base is not strong. And that is what I tell people. Build your base. Make sure that what you are doing is strong. It's about whether you do T or whether you go wide like this or whether you go deep like this on the T learning curve. It depends on where you are, what job, how long have you done it. There is no one answer, but it's for people to ask themselves.
Super, super. Lovely. That brings me to the last question of this lovely conversation. I mean, putting all the learnings from the book plus also your own journey. Give us 2 bullseye advice for the listeners.
Well, I will tell you, first, be authentic. be who you are. That takes care of vulnerability, everything. Be authentic, be who you are. You will sleep very well at night. Second, enable people to get things done.
Right.
That is what leaders do. That is what good colleagues do. That is what people in the organizations do. You enable others to get things done. Those are the two things is my advice.
Fantastic. So for all the listeners, authenticity and playing the role of an enabler, I think, are key learnings that Amit is giving us. Thank you so much, Amit, for taking time and coming on the show. It was a fantastic start for Leaders in Library Season 3. I am so humbled and glad to have you. It's just a matter of time for me to take the flight, come to your city and meet you in person. We have not met in person. We have been talking on virtual. It was an absolute joy having a chat with you, Amit.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for having me. And I know, my apologies once again, it's taken season 3, but for your listeners, thank you very much. If there is one thing that you want to do is read any book that you want to. It doesn't matter whether it's the children's book, whether it is a graphic book. I read all sorts, read anything and read what works for you. Read it in hard copy, read it in Kindle, read it in audiobook. There is no shame. Listen to a book. I do all 3. Right? If you want to know more about what I do, you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm also there on Goodreads. And if I can help you in your reading journey, please feel free to reach out. We'll be very glad to help you in your reading journey. Thank you
so much for that. Thank you so much for the offer. Lovely. You have a lovely day ahead. Bye-bye.